this is one thing that has really shifted for me in working in the sex industry, because in the beginning it was like, okay, we emasculate these drunk men and we manipulate them and we take advantage of them so that we can make money. And that's how this industry works. And there was a pivotal point where I was like, no, fuck that. How can I support them to walk out feeling like a king? Like they can take over the world because they're a good fucking person.
This is Awakened Love, the podcast, and I'm your host, Angel. This is a space where we get real about sex, love, and awakening. So strap in, let's go deep. What's up, beautiful awakened beings? Welcome to another episode of Awakened Love. Today, I am joined by Lana Shay, a lifelong holistic living advocate, ex-exotic dancer, psychonaut, medicine woman, and practitioner of the tantric arts. What's up, Queen? Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
So I just want to start us off with a light question. What star sign are you?
Capricorn.
How has that played out for you? Like, do you resonate with being a Capricorn?
I actually really love that we're starting here, because yesterday I recorded a podcast. And a big piece of that was hilarious, that we actually just got stuck on, stayed there and laughed for a while, was we're having a conversation, my girlfriend and I, by the pool, just laying outside before we started the podcast. And I said, there was a guy that approached me and said, hey, I want to know what your sign is. And then he put my sign into that app. What is it? Pattern?
Yeah.
I think the name of it. And he said, hey, look, we are such a good match and I think we could have a relationship. And I told her, like, this is the number one way to turn me off. And there's no chance anymore, sir. We no longer match in any way, shape, or form. I don't care what the app says. And that means nothing to me. Astrology does not do it for me, bro. And
Lana, does that mean that we have no chance? Does that mean that this podcast has no chance? I'm kind of into that.
We have all the potential in the world. However, that guy, I told her, hey, if some guy approached me and said, hey, I've done some time. I've been in jail. I got out and rebuilt my entire life. I'd be much more adamant to talk to him. I said, I know I sound a little hood right now, but I'm being honest. And out comes this guy, sits down, starts talking to us, and he goes, I just got out of jail and I rebuilt my whole life.
Oh my God, girl. When you're a witch and you got to watch your words, because words be spells. And so, like, are you guys dating now? And also, like, what's his sign? No, I'm just kidding.
He didn't tell me, but I told him about the story. It was yesterday. It was good. He was actually like this amazing motivational speaker. And he was like, I want to help you too, like build your businesses. You seem like you're going to take over the world. I'm like, what is going on right now? Once again, witch powers.
Yeah. Wow. I'm so glad that we started here. And now that I got you in my sticky web, can you introduce our listeners? Who is Lana?
Oh, goodness. Now that we started that way.
I know. Like, just from star sign to like doop. I got you. I tricked you. Ha.
You're good. She's good. Who am I? I really love to mention always that I was born in the Midwest in Madison, Wisconsin. So I am a farm girl of the heartland of the Midwest, the middle of the country, where we have like good old heart-centered people. And that's really stuck with me. And I feel good about it. I have so much pride, Midwestern pride. I'm from a place where people are like, really connected to the land. And it's important that we love our cows. And there is something to that, actually, because I am a very earthy person. And here we go back to the Capricorn. I'm
so not into astrology, but BRB, back to Capricorn. Love it. Dish it, girl.
To come full circle, I really am a Capricorn. So that, and I've gone through this whole paradox of like, all right, I came from the farmland, the Midwest, the heartland of the country, and then gone and found the most shadowy places that society believes are shadowy, like, you know, the sex industry. And I feel like I've gotten to this really well-rounded place at this point in my life in so many ways. And I am just a curious person, so I want to keep exploring that, but on both ends of the spectrum. So overall, I think I'm just a really curious explorer of everything inside and out.
Woman after my own heart, a seeker, dare I say. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So you said something before we started recording. You said sex work is light work. And I just thought that was really interesting. And you just shared here that you moved from being in the heartland to sex work and the sex industry and being, I believe, a sex educator. So clearly you've discovered the power within sex. And so I'd love to know both, can you extrapolate for people listening on what do you mean when you say sex work is light work? And then part 2 of that question is like, when did you discover that this like inherent power and light within sex?
These are big questions. I like it. Let's get right into the juice. Squeeze it. Let's see. So I stepped into the sex industry as an exotic dancer when I was in farmland, when I was in Wisconsin, when I was a little bit older than some, when they become a stripper, should I say, when I was 22. And that was just, you know, I want to make as much money as fast as I can and get the hell out of this country because I have tasted Europe and Asia and no more US for me. Like that was the impetus, you know. The catalyst was like being in France and just going to markets all day and being at parks and loving life and feeling like life was art and it was not in the middle of the Midwest. And I wanted to get back. I danced for maybe 4 years before I met my now husband, but my husband at the time. And when I first met him, I told him, hey, I don't want to get into a committed relationship unless it's with somebody who wants to dive into the tantric arts. And that was because I had a girlfriend when I was in my early 20s who said, you know, I started sleeping with this guy and it's like cosmic, it's mind-blowing. We're not taking anything, but I feel like I'm so high and it's because he practices tantra and he's teaching me all these tantric things and I'm having mind-blowing orgasms. And I was like, what? I want that. So it took
Sign me up.
Every guy after that had to hear my whole spiel. Like, I don't really know exactly what this stuff is, but I know that I need you to do it with me.
Yes.
So we started practicing. I'll just shorten the story a little bit. And because we were so deep into it and so committed to practicing with each other, it came into my time at the club. So I didn't really have a filter. I wasn't one of those dancers who had this whole spiel made up. And I would, you know, I didn't ever make up anything about my age or my story. It was just like too much work. So I was authentic from the very beginning. Even the whole like stereotypical stripper thing, like, you know, drinking and doing drugs and like, you know, needing to bring in my designer purses and all of this. It was none of that was happening. Like I started, you know, from myself in the beginning, like, all right, I'm telling you right now that you can't keep drinking all night and that you need to start hydrating now. Like I would tell my clients the weirdest shit. You know, they were just like, are you telling me to stop drinking? You're supposed to drink with me. I'm like, no, I think you're a little too drunk. I want you to hydrate.
Bless.
But then it moved on to Tantra. So yeah, I started with telling them to hydrate, giving them like health coaching, Lana, and then brought in Tantrika, Lana, and asked them if in the VIP they wanted to breathe together and meditate and learn about the microcosmic orbit. And they're like, who the fuck are you?
Who is this sex witch?
Yeah, that was one I got a lot, was the witch and the hippie and you're the worst stripper ever. Like, you're not trying to take my money, you're trying to teach me about breathing? And like, yeah, we can do both. But
the worst or the best? Like, come on now.
Clearly.
Where's that strip club? I'd go to it.
We're opening it soon. Don't worry. That's coming. That's the other piece of
Oh,
this.
amazing. I'll invest.
Yeah. So there's that. I can go deep into that one. And there's so much more there, but I really discovered the power of the sexual energy and like sex work being light work when I noticed clients coming back and seeing a shift in them, and also the way that they would connect with me. And I have this pinnacle story that I actually, oddly enough, left out of my memoir about being in the sex industry. But a man who came into the club in when I was working in Vegas, he had taken MDMA, which is my medicine. Before he had come in, he was drinking a little bit, but it wasn't the focal point, which is most people who come into strip clubs, especially in Vegas, they're belligerent, they're drinking, whatever. That's the thing, right? Like, people drink when they come to strip clubs. So it was exciting to approach him, and I could feel it. I was like, did you happen to take MDMA tonight? And he was like, yeah. We're all rolling. And I was like, oh, the rolling group. Thank goodness. So I took him back in VIP, and I didn't have the words for it at that time. It was a few years before I got the languaging, but it felt a bit like a psychedelic psychotherapy session. And no, I am not a licensed therapist, but it's a joke that, all strippers are kind of therapists and thongs, because we really just do listen to people's problems and console and but you can take it a step beyond and coach and support. And especially when people are kind of in that really vulnerable state and they're like, oh, this person's never going to see me again. Sometimes they divulge, the deepest, darkest, or, the most vulnerable things about themselves. And so we went in deep, the guy on MDMA and I, and it was enjoyable, really enjoyable. And, I didn't know at the time, but he was a school teacher, and that was something I learned later when we didn't exchange phone numbers at this time. I'll take it back just a little bit, or share any information. So we had no connection once we left that session in the VIP. And then I was very public very soon after about my time in the sex industry. So the book was coming out. I was doing a book campaign, and I was publishing articles on Medium and things like this with my dancer name. I've had the same dancer name forever. And he found me actually 6 years later. Yes, I was dancing for a long time. And he came in and he said, do you remember me? Well, you met me while I was on MDMA in Vegas, and I'm a school teacher, and our session changed the whole way that I interact with my students and the way I live my life. And, you told me to eat some mushrooms and go into the redwoods in the Bay Area in San Francisco by myself. And I did it, and it was life affirming and all these things. He was just going on. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay, this is some powerful shit. This,
You know what it makes me think of? And yes. Yeah. I mean, I'm feeling it, and it's making me think of, in ancient times when we had goddess temples, and very often soldiers would come back from war and come into these temples with the goddesses, and there would be plenty of tantric rites and rituals and pleasure and bathing and cleansing and loving and filling these human beings back up with love, that were doing really difficult, traumatizing things in order to preserve and protect, these ancient villages. And we've kind of lost those temples. And I was just talking to a client about this today, because I was saying, where is the pleasure education for men and for women, but for men to learn how to open a woman, and so many men are willing, but many of us as women get taught that it's a man's job to open us fully and completely, not to co-create that opening. And so then we give our power away, and then we feel really resentful if our partner isn't opening us. And we're like, well, you're doing it wrong. You can't open me. Instead of how can I initiate you? How do I learn to open myself so that I can initiate you into co-opening me, and then me into opening you? And then here we go. Now we're in this microcosmic orbit, tantric realm. And when I'm hearing you speak, I'm like, wow, sister, it sounds like you were creating a temple, like a goddess temple of rite and ritual and initiation. And when I'm hearing you describe that, I'm like, wow, you initiated this man. Damn.
Oh, I love this. We're tapped in, immediately tapped in. So exactly what you just said, I wrote about in my book, like to a T, almost verbatim, some of it that you just touched upon.
Whoa.
There is definitely, I'm feeling this, like there's a collective weaving going on right now, especially we are definitely connected in our network of, Southern California. Yeah. And the call to action for during the book campaign before I published the book was for sex workers to really claim their power, their sexual energy, and to co-create this conscious strip club. And that's the easiest way for me to articulate it. But it really is, coming back to those Dakini temples, because maybe we aren't calling in the men who have gone to war like it was. Who knows? We don't know what's going to happen in the future. But men are going to war every time they walk out into this current matrix, right? So, I mean, the women too, we all are. But we do need... we need those temples. Where did they go? And I think that strip clubs really are those temples. We just need to keep shining the light on them and pulling the light out and like shifting the dynamic, and also pulling the alcohol out. That's a big thing for me. My whole life is about holistic living and health, and I am not an advocate for all the socially acceptable drugs, including alcohol and sugar. And
Yeah. I don't think anyone's ever been like, when I'm my best self is when I black out. Or like, last night you were wasted and I just feel you were like a better version of you. It's like, no, dude, that's just not true. There's a time and a place for that medicine. And I think with most substances, there's like a form. For example, if we think about cocaine, like to me personally, I think that is not a medicine that brings a high frequency. You could chew coca leaf though, and then there's a frequency of that. So there's a form of that medicine and an amount of that medicine, but then we bastardize it into cocaine, cover it in blood with that industry, and then we wonder why the frequency is so low. Or it's like alcohol, set and setting and quantity. It's like 1 to 2 glasses of wine with a small group of friends after a meal. And again, there's also like the biological aspect of that. If you've eaten food and you're drinking wine with food, then it's not going to hit you so hard. You're not drinking a vodka shot on an empty stomach. If you're sitting around with friends that you already have a safe container, if you get a little bit more loose-lipped and like loosey-goosey, like that's a beautiful thing, right? There's like time and place for all these substances and these medicines. And I just wish that we had a proper education around that instead of just like sex is bad, drugs bad, like this is okay, alcohol is okay, even if you get fucking blackout drunk. It's like, it's so much more nuanced than that. I think this idea of strip clubs as temples is so interesting to me. And it's interesting because I've always loved the idea of strip clubs. Like I've been to them and think like, there's been a few where I'm like, damn, this is like some Cirque du Soleil shit. Like, oh my God, everybody, more money for this woman. Like, whoa, like, wow. And then there's been other times when I've been into strip clubs and I'm like, I just get this like sick feeling in my stomach where I feel like this, like, oh my God, is that woman okay? Like, I don't feel like she's okay. This doesn't feel okay. Like, I want to just get the fuck out of here. Like, and so it's like, we're talking about, what I'm hearing you talk about is like the high vision of like what these spaces could be, where we restore beauty, right, on the altar of the sacred. Because let's face it, we all love fucking beauty. We love to look at I'm looking at the mountains right now. Like I look at art, I look at things and it moves me. And beauty is not perfection. Those mountains are not perfect. Someone singing a beautiful song is not perfect. Like watching someone hug their kid really beautifully. Like there's mess in it, but there's something that moves us. And watching a woman in her power moving the female form, like it is it's sacred, it's beautiful, but we have to like restore it on that altar. But there's so much distortion in that field because it's like you're speaking about the temple, this like high vision. And then I'm like thinking of the times where I'm like, I wish I went to that temple, but instead I went into this other like really crusty ass place where I'm like, oh my God, like what is going on in here? So it's like, where's the disparity there? Can you talk a little bit to the shadow side of this industry? And then let's try and see if we can walk our way. If we can cross the chasm, if we can close the gap.
Oh, I love it. Oh, it's so good. So I already mentioned it, the number one thing, the substances, and coming in and it people are already drunk or they come in and drink, and there's this disassociated sort of vibe once people start drinking. And also Coke. Yeah, it's funny you brought up Coke. So they're drinking and they're doing blow, and it's like, okay, we cut off any potential for connection at that point. And that's the major shift there. You know, if they come in and they're ready to actually connect, and they take something like MDMA instead of alcohol before they walk in, or maybe a microdose of mushrooms, or, you know, maybe they don't take anything. But I'm a huge advocate for psychedelics, which we can go into that in a moment. But for the potential to connect, I think you probably have things to say here too. But that is what people are looking for, I believe, when they walk in, but squash any possibility of it once they start disconnecting with substances. And also it being at night. It's always at night when people are going to strip clubs. Yeah, some are open during the daytime, and, there are people who frequent clubs in the daytime, but mostly it's a nighttime thing, right? Like, oh, it's late, let's go to the strip club and do the things that are in the shadows, in the dark, the naughty things, the sexual things, the the things we don't want to talk about. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Like, no, sex is not. It's not a dark thing. It doesn't need to be associated with the dark. It doesn't need to be in the shadows. Like, let's bring it out into the light. Like, can we have windows in the strip clubs? Strip clubs do not have windows. They never have windows, right? It's like it has to be
literally.
It's like, yeah, it's like, let's trap it in this like cell type, prison cell type box. It's like, all right, we know we're going to do something dark and naughty. That piece. And then also it's mostly, this is not necessarily wrong or bad, because I love men. I love the masculine. I honor the masculine, but it's mostly, it's men who run and own strip clubs, right? So there's something about that dynamic that is not balanced. And there's so much there.
We need a female founded run strip club, honey, conscious strip club. I'm ready to invest. Where does this exist already? Are we creating it? Like, what's happening here?
I'm so, every time I just get chills. Whenever I start going into this with someone, especially one-on-one, I either get the line, I'm ready to invest, or I get, take my money, or take all my money. And I'm like, man, should I start writing down every time I get this line? Like, we've got some real.
No, you should just open a conscious, you're doing that, right? This is what's happening? I don't know.
I'm going to New York tomorrow to meet with somebody who's running a strip club and also frequents Burning Man. There's so much there. That's all I need to say in this moment. But and he is ready to move more into the conscious realm. So things are happening.
You're like, can be like a conscious strip club consultant. My question is, and also I think you need to found one. Just putting that out there. That's my personal selfish request. I just love this so much. So my other question is, I love this, like the substances, so agree. Bring it into the light. I love that. Windows, like, I'm seeing like an outdoor event in the mountains somewhere beautiful. What about like supporting the dancers to like hold this energy? Because it's a fucking powerful force. You and I both work with this force, and this force of Eros, like feminine radiance, Shakti, Kali, all the many different flavors of and faces of the feminine. Like, this is not a toy. This is a powerful energy. And those lower frequencies, I myself have had to work through this in my lineage of like using beauty to secure safety, or like those like threads of manipulation that are connected to being disempowered systematically as women for so long. And how do we create the support, or what do you envision that looking like? Because I do also imagine that a lot of women who are attracted to sex work, also potentially there is probably a higher proportion of trauma. Like I myself, right, am a sex educator and I'm a survivor of sexual trauma. That's why I was interested in healing through this. So what would you say to that about like that, because that's a lot of people's objection. It's like, oh, these girls are traumatized. And it's like, well, yes, and who isn't, by the way. But how do we support women to do this in a way that is truly and authentically empowered?
Yeah, there's definitely some preliminary work, right?
Yes.
So in building this and visioning it, I've done so much journaling. I've created a pitch deck. I've gone that far and spoken with so many women who have been in the sex industry for a long period of time, some of them longer than myself, and created a framework. There has to be training prior, and women who do understand the tantric arts, and this is going to sound so silly, but it makes so much sense. I jokingly say, let's consult the ayahuasca strippers, because there's so many girls that I have connected with who it's usually literally ayahuasca, but have explored with psychedelics, and they're tuned in a different way once they use psychedelics and walk into a strip club, and have a different awareness and a different frequency, and also integrity changes. It really shifts.
They're playing the deeper game. Whoa, because that's like psychedelics initiates you into playing the deeper game. Wow. This is a mind-blowing conversation. I'm like, holy whoa. So whoa. And I mean, if you think about it, that makes sense. The temples, like you had initiates, you were initiated into carrying goddess wisdom. There was a lineage. And so much of, the desecration of these lineages, particularly the wisdom that was carried by women, that's like what we're missing, is like these structures, these lineages to hold us and help us integrate these energies that do require an energetic infrastructure to hold. Like even if we think about Kundalini and the awakenings people have and how people can go through like really, whether you call it psychosis or whether a lot of the spiritual community is called like a spiritual crisis or a spiritual emergency, is essentially oftentimes someone getting activated too fast, too soon without the proper care, aftercare, integration, and energetic infrastructure. And I think, and I'm sure you might agree, I see you nodding for those that are listening, like Eros and awakening the force of Shakti is like just as powerful and to be tended to as awakening the force of ayahuasca or like psychedelics. So when does the program begin to initiate women for the temple? Where do we sign up?
Oh, I love this. I mean, we're already doing the work, right? Aren't we? I mean, I was looking around through all of your magic and seeing that you have a program that's either starting or starting soon or already has started with Rachel. Yeah. Total babe, by the way. I was listening to that podcast and I was like wanting to stand up on my couch like and clap, even though I was by myself. I was like standing fucking ovation. There was like something about like women wanting to be fucked open or something like that. And I was just like, oh, all of this.
I'm being fucked open by this podcast right now. Yeah. Cut from the same cloth. Yeah.
Oh, that's so fucking good. Oh, love it. But that is the work, isn't it? So women coming together and supporting each other, and also this deep understanding that is way under we have this like facade, this like societal conditioning. I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, but I have to go here. I was spending a lot of time in Wisconsin recently, where I'm from, and just I was spending time with my sister and my mom and my family, watching the dynamics of all these different couples and relationships. And there's always a reminder every single day, but it just kept hitting me in the face that we are in such a little bubble, and I have to keep remembering that and learning how to be the bridge and bridge the gap, which dancing has been beautiful for that. Strip clubs, like just being aware of what's going on in the world. But we are really in a bubble. Not everyone has this understanding, awareness, or intention to honor their partner and to have that dynamic, that masculine, feminine dynamic where it's like, I'm devoted and like I bow to you and I honor you, and vice versa. And this is one thing that has really shifted for me in working in the sex industry, because in the beginning it was like, okay, we emasculate these drunk men and we manipulate them and we take advantage of them so that we can make money. And that's how this industry works. And there was a pivotal point where I was like, no, fuck that. How can I bring these men up and make them walk out feeling like, how can I support them to walk out feeling like a king? Like they can take over the world because they're a good fucking person. And like digging inside of them, like, where's the light? Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, sorry, my love. I isn't that like a metaphor for fucking the feminine rising, actually, of like, as women kind of overcoming, let's say, like, we just have to name the elephant in the room. Like, yes, there has been a patriarchal reign. There is still on this planet today in certain countries where gender violence is a regular thing. I mean, even in the countries where we're more free, gender violence is domestic violence. It's like, it's a problem. And there's that shadow aspect that wants to rise up and say, well, fuck you. And like, let's flip the power. Let's invert the power. And now I'm on top of you. Like, I fucking take from you, versus what I'm hearing you talk about, which is this beautiful, like, elevation in consciousness and this opportunity to say, no, I'm going to lift you up so that you can rise and be better, and so that we can be better together. Wow. And to do that through these spaces. What would you say to anyone who's listening, who's like judging the sex industry, or like judging exotic dances, or like that's wrong or bad, or like, what are some of the judgments you have heard? I'm sure you've heard a lot of them, like the main ones that you hear. And like, what would you say to people that are having those thoughts or judgments right now?
Read my book.
Honestly, what's it called, and where can they find it?
My book is Erotic Hustle: Redefining Sin Through Sacred Sexuality and Psychedelics. And I didn't write this book so that people would read it. I'll be really honest. I wrote this book because I needed to, for myself, and to step out of and write a new chapter, start the new chapter for myself, to step out of the sex industry and not feel like I'd wasted a decade of my life. I had to utilize it as my own like cathartic therapeutic process, writing this book. And to have people really close to me, or maybe not even close to me, read it, like my editor, a couple editors, actually, I had so many people go through it and just really see me and say, hey, you have to go back. You disassociated here. You have to add some emotion. You have to relive this. You can't tell this story like this. You can't just like recount everything and put it in a book. Like, we need the real shit here, like the grit, the juice. Like, go back, feel it, bring in dialogue, bring in emotion. Michael Ellsberg actually is the name of one of the people that went through and really, shifted everything for me in writing this book, and really going deep and showing the truth about someone, who lived a very fucked up childhood and went into the sex industry, and what I brought in there. And the whole, strippers, sex workers have daddy issues, right? We've all heard that. And if you haven't, that's a common one. Yeah, I have fucking daddy issues, and I'm working through them and very aware of them. And I put it all out there in this book, and I'm not afraid to talk about it, or even mention, I know a lot of girls who also have the same thing, or they have an issue with this, or they've, experienced sexual trauma in some way, shape, or form. And this is what it looked like. They had to face it in this industry, where the mirror's up all the time. And there's a choice. You can either walk into the sex industry and keep re-traumatizing yourself and go deeper into it and, disassociate with drugs and alcohol and all the things. Or you can look into the mirror and see, like, all right, what do I do now? How do I start uncovering the pieces of myself that have been, covered up by this trauma, if that makes sense? There's so much there.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I think what's coming through too for me is, you'll often hear people say things like, oh, like you're objectifying yourself. And I'm like, why is it okay for men to have made and profited off women's bodies, whether it's through like trafficking and like unethical pornography, whether it's through even ethical forms of sex work, whether it's through free labor, through marriage, how many thousands of years of like women being passed from father to husband, and like our bodies have been used in so many different ways, and women are not allowed to profit from it. And as soon as a woman is like, yeah, okay, I'm going to actually profit from this benefit, I'm going to benefit from this. And like, how is that any different than making a piece of art? Like, why is it that eros and dancing, because it can, and I can understand it might not be that, as you're saying, if you're re-traumatizing yourself, but like anything, the action is fairly neutral. It's like what you imbue it. So I hope when people are listening, they can really start to recognize that.
Yeah.
What would you say to that?
I love that. So when women are going through this process, whether they did walk into it, it doesn't always have to be trauma, right? You don't have to have the stereotype slapped on you, or you're someone in the sex industry and you have these issues or whatever. But like you were saying earlier, we all have something, that we're working through. But when you do find yourself in that industry, I'm speaking from my own experience, and there is this place of empowerment and you are feeling aligned, and I would feel like I was saying earlier, sending people out better than they walked in. That was my intention. Whether or not they chose to, work on whatever I was giving them in that moment. Let's breathe together. When you're in that place, that's when the sex work is the light work, which you can do in light work in any realm. It's crazy, but I know it sounds a little like on the edge to say that.
No, well, you're on the edge for our listeners, like the right edge. So it's like, welcome. This is, I think most people listening are nodding. You could be a postman. You could be working at the grocery store. You could be a parent. You could be like painter, a sex worker. Like, it's all light work if we're bringing our essence. And exactly as you so beautifully shared, are we in the intention to serve, to leave this space, this place, the people we encounter better than we found them. And you can do that in infinite ways. Why do you think people judge sex work so much?
Because it's the most powerful sexual energy. It's the most powerful energy on the planet, right? It's the energy, the creative life force energy that created us all, the reason why we're all here. Without sexual energy, we would not exist. This planet would not, our species would cease to exist. So I think that energy is terrifying for so many people because of the stigma and all of the bullshit that is not true, the things that we've learned that are so very wrong that we can go into, of course. But I think that there's that fear, like, there's this powerful energy, and people don't realize that it's like scary. And then also just, I think that when people are in their power, it's confronting for the people who are not in their power. And not to shame them in any way, but, like they're looking like, wait, I'm not there. What's that? That doesn't work. I don't feel that when I look at you. It's this weird, I can explain it like energetically almost, like I can feel it in my body. And I don't want to say it to shame anyone who hasn't stepped into their power, because I can definitely see myself like shrinking and being small in so many places and spaces in my life. But I felt that even among other dancers, like this, sometimes there's this energy between girls in a strip club or anywhere in the world where there's this competition instead of magnifying one another. It's the microcosm. It's the same everywhere.
How have you transformed that in your life? Like, I think it's such a pivotal initiation that every woman on this planet has to walk through, or gets to walk through, and may yet to walk through, but the opportunity is there. This portal that you're talking about, from competition to collaboration to celebration, like how is that journey for you?
Yeah. I'm remembering one specific evening when I was working at the Spearmint Rhino in Las Vegas, and I had just started there. It's a massive club. It's so intense. On a very busy Saturday night, maybe not currently, but a few years ago, there'd be 800 girls working. The club is fucking huge. And imagine how many different characters and personalities, and, just like women who are like, they're kind of aggressive in a lot of ways. These are very like dominant, masculine women. Like, they're in that archetype when they're out there like making money, and there can be a lot of competition, but there can also be the complete flip side and a lot of collaboration and support. So I was sitting in this area, and there were girls sitting there who the manager or some of the the host, they would call them, use when men would walk in the door that came in the limo service or whatever. They'd say, okay,
excuse me, sorry,
bless you. They would send these girls. So they were like the girls that the club would work with to make money, because they would tip them after they went in the VIP rooms. And so I sat down with this group, and I never really felt intimidated working with these girls or sitting in a group with them. But I did feel kind of like almost isolated in a way. Like, okay, I don't work the way that these girls work, and the club doesn't really like me, because I'm not going to work with the club, because they would generally send these girls with men who would drink a lot and they wanted sexual favors and all of this. And it was never my thing. Needless to say, I'm going to end up with them at some point sitting with girls who are working with the club. So I was sitting with them, and this girl says, okay, well, I'm going to get us all in the VIP. This is a big group and whatever. So she's negotiating everything with the guy that's making the decisions for the group, and basically got us all in a room for the whole night for hours. And we didn't have to do anything. I ended up just sitting down at that moment that she was negotiating. So she kind of made my night that night. And then at the end, it was a great time too. Like while we were all sitting in there together, like all the girls were, chit-chatting and like good to each other and sweet. We were kind of playful, and all the guys left, and the girls who were sitting in there didn't know her, but we all sat together at the very end and I think we all handed her $100 or $50 or something like that. And we were like, thank you for negotiating that for all of us. And her and I became close after that. And I realized that there were, like, you can feel this energy when you are even standing next to in the back room, whatever, with girls like this who are just there to uplift everyone. And they do so much better. And they just, they have this field around them, this like auric field. They're like light walking around, and they're just magnetizing all of these amazing things and amazing customers, like people who are more respectful and happy. And that was a huge moment for me. And I was like, okay, this is great. I just want to work with all the women here. I want everyone, the whole like a rising tide lifts all boats. I'm like, can we all help each other? Can we like all have a meeting together before we walk out?
Yes. Oh my gosh. And this is so translatable, like across any context, right? I'm sure any woman listening can resonate with that feeling of when you recognize that, holy shit, this idea that competition, that I have to be this way in order to get my share is a lie. And when I collaborate, I receive so much more. It's so much richer. It's so much better. Like, oh, wow. And then the better it gets, the better it gets. And it's this like upward spiral. And you're so right. I'm so grateful to all the women in my life who taught me this as well, that came into my field and modeled this way of being to me, which was another option when I'd seen so much competition. And I had this story for so long. Women hate me. Women are jealous of me. I have to like kind of just be quiet power, like, and just like hang back, but not shrink, but hang back, because otherwise it'll put a target on my back, all this bullshit. And women are the ones that loved me open and helped me rewrite that story. Now I always say, I love women. Women love me. I'm a goddess magnet. And like, it's true, because I love women and therefore women love me. It's like, and we get to just rewrite that story, and how much richer is life together. This fucking, this goddess rising. Oh, I love the way that you're such a storyteller. It's so, so beautiful. I want to get time to touch on psychedelics as well.
Yes.
For you to share. We were talking, I'm like, we're going everywhere, guys. Everywhere, everything, all at once. Strap in. Shakti. Anyway, so, oh my God. Rachel and I recorded a podcast yesterday, and we were so fucking on one. And I was just like, are we even okay? Like, can we even post this? Like, holy shit. We're like, so much Shakti energy. Thank you. See, this is sisterhood. We were just like, let's just do it anyway. That whole like too much paradigm. So we were talking about, and I'm not sure, and we can delete this if, so editors listening, just delete what I'm about to say either way. But do you want to talk about Kambo?
Yeah.
Okay.
Happy
so
to talk about.
We were talking about. Okay, so we were talking about Kambo, and I feel like Kambo is a medicine that is not as widely talked about. Like psychedelics, they're having kind of a renaissance right now, which is so beautiful and wonderful. And there are a lot of psychedelics that are like heavily circulated and talked about. I feel Kambo is not one of them. So I would just love to hear you talk about Kambo, what it is, the process, the ritual, the benefits, the dangers.
Yeah. Yeah. This one, I'll start with my own story because I found Kambo because I went to have an iboga experience. Not sure if you're familiar with iboga, but I can explain. It's the root bark of a shrub from West Africa, from Gabon, and they use it as their sacrament. And I'm not going to articulate this very beautifully, but I'm going to say it anyway. When people came in and tried to convert them in terms of religion, they said, no, we're not converting. We know God. We have our God. And they had this iboga, this root bark of the shrub. They're like, we're very connected to our God. We're not converting. We don't believe you. And there's... It's by far the most powerful psychedelic on the planet. It's like a 3-day experience. It's like you feel like you are in the journey for a lifetime. So fucking intense. But that's just a side note there. So I went to receive this medicine at a medical facility in Mexico, and one of the assistants there, I'll call her, said, "Oh, do you know about Kambo?" Because a lot of people receive Kambo before they receive iboga because it helps with the, cleansing out, and like it makes the neurotransmitters in your gut available to...
You did Kambo and then iboga? Whoa. Okay. Strap in, y'all. Okay. Sorry. Got a warrior present. Jesus Christ.
So now that we know that I'm super hardcore. No, I didn't actually, thank God, I didn't actually receive the Kambo before the iboga, but that's when I learned about it. And I'm glad that I didn't, because when I actually found the first Kambo practitioner that I worked with in the ceremony, it was not light for me in any way, shape, or form. Like some people I serve Kambo. They have this, short, brief, beautiful experience, and it's not very heavy. There's no herxing, which means the Herxheimer reaction, which means things get worse before they get better. Like it brings out whatever illness was in there, whatever. There's so many different directions I'm going with this. I'm trying to keep it narrowed in.
No, I'm right here with you. You're doing great.
There's so much there. I love it. So I had a surgical abortion when I was in my early 20s, and I suffered from extremely painful menstrual cramps for so long. It felt like a whole lifetime, but post that surgical abortion, because it wasn't done properly. And I just would be writhing in pain on a bed, like for 3 days, bawling my eyes out, shaking, sweating. It was so painful. And when I first experienced Kambo, I was thinking, I just want to do this because I've gone to Southeast Asia so many times, and I think that'll help eliminate some parasites and like the die-off symptoms and whatever. It'll help move things through. Little did I know I was going to be met with a whole different healing game, and that was the womb healing. So after maybe the 6th time receiving Kambo, you never know how many times it takes. I just felt myself needing to keep going back. I was called to keep going back. I relived that abortion, like completely, down to like I was laying on the floor thinking the same thoughts, writhing in pain, like the shock that came because it was so bizarre. I decided not to they didn't put me under when I had the abortion, and they're like, you have to sign this waiver. You might go into shock. You might die. It's a really bad idea. And I'm like, you know what? I don't care. I don't jab me with any extra needles. Like, I'm not doing it. I don't know what I was thinking. When I was in my 20s, I was just like nutty. So after reliving that abortion once, I thought, this is a powerful medicine. I want to serve it myself. I want to carry this medicine, this, this is what I've been looking for so many years. I've been looking for this, like, you know, something that's deep and powerful. I've had a lot of illness in my family. It happened 4 more times after that, this like reliving this abortion. And my teacher, while I was doing the training, said, you know, I'm not able to give you the certificate. You're not able to finish the training right now. At this time, you're going to have to come back because I can't stop the whole training every time you start reliving this abortion and you have like a 2-hour process. So I had to leave the training, and like right before we did this, what they call the warrior initiation, where you receive it 3 times in 3 hours. And it's really intense. So I don't know what would have happened at that time. I had to leave, go through this whole process. I wrote articles about this, so I won't go into it if anyone wants to hear the whole story. I did finally finish the training, and after figuring out what was going on with my womb and doing a lot of womb healing there and connecting to it and realizing how disconnected I was and disassociated and how much I held there, that almost had nothing to do with the abortion. There's so many other things. And Kambo really healed me. And for an entire year after I became certified as a Kambo practitioner and carried the medicine, I didn't have any cramps. Nothing. After 10 years of like this excruciating pain, nothing. I would just go through my moon cycle and it was like beautiful and light, and I felt more connected to my womb, and it was like this beautiful journey of my inner womb space that Kambo allowed me to develop. Fast forward, there was a miscarriage after that, and I started getting cramps again, but not anywhere near as excruciating. Like my cramps, I know exactly when they're coming and what they come from. If I have my phone on during my moon, or if I go outside in a busy street or a city, I get cramps immediately. It's always a reminder to stay within and stay in a little nest and, you know, really dive into self-care and be with myself. It's like almost like a psychedelic journey when I bleed now. You're shaking your head like I know you.
It's a straight up psychedelic journey. Whoa. Yeah. I was having this conversation with my mom, bless her, and she was like, yeah, like, I don't know why in Australia we have so many public holidays. Bless us, love the holidays. And she's like, why can't we give women a couple days off a month just to like rest? We're so obsessed with public holidays. Let's like divert some of that energy. Wow, that's so incredible. So how were you able to heal after the miscarriage and the cramps that came back with Kambo again?
Yeah, so I'm kind of working through that now, actually, but I didn't exactly mention. So Kambo is the secretion from the giant green monkey tree frog. Philomedusa bicolor is the full name of that species, and they live in the upper basin of the Amazon, like high up in the trees. And the way that the medicine is collected from the Katukina, Kashinawa, Hunikwin, Yawanawa, and Matsi's tribe is, I think there may be another one that uses this medicine, but they sing a song, the frogs come down from the trees, so they choose to come, you know, they don't have to come down. And they know what's happening because the shaman will tickle their toes, is what they say. I haven't watched this process, I'll be completely honest, just like via video. And they tie their little legs up like in the form of an X so that they can tickle their toes, and then the secretion comes off the back. And they only take about 20%, so they leave the frog with its natural defense system, its defense mechanism. And they use this within the tribes for all kinds of things, mostly what they call panema, which is like bad luck. They believe that it clears out bad luck. And then it's a hunting medicine. So the men will receive Kambo before they go hunt because it ignites their senses, you know, it clears them out so they can track the animal. And then they use it for like children who are behaving badly, which I think they're probably behaving badly because they have like some hormonal imbalance or something, you know, they're teenagers or whatever. And Kambo really resets that, in my opinion. I'm not a doctor, I'm not making any claims. But yeah, from what I've seen, I raised a teenage boy with my ex-husband, and he received a good amount of Kambo from practitioners and from both of us after we were trained, and he loved it, and it did a lot for him. So that's all I'll say there.
Yeah. And is it administered through burns? Because when people have done Kambo, they carry like a scar, right?
Yeah. So the way that it's a transdermal treatment. So we use like the way that I was trained, a little herbal incense stick that's fine to burn the skin with. And we just get down to the dermis. It's like a little blister on the skin. And then we remove that skin just like with a wet paper towel. And then these tiny little reconstituted, they look like little boogers. It's not very sexy to talk about, but you put those on the little open gates and then it goes into the system very quickly. And then, your heart rate goes way up and then it plummets down below resting heart rate. And some people can faint at this point and then you start purging. So it's like this, the secretion is like this chemical cocktail of bioactive peptides. And it's been found to be the most powerful natural antibiotic on the planet. So,
wow.
You know what antibiotics do. So there are so many different uses for it. It's just beyond. And there are studies and things that people can look up, but there's so much more that can be done, needs to be done.
Yeah. Wow. It's interesting that you brought up the frog story because last night I was at a dinner. There's a huge psychedelic conference here I live in Boulder, but in Denver. And I was sitting across from an Indigenous couple and they were there to really preserve and give a voice to their medicine, peyote, and how much it needs to be preserved and to please don't create a demand for this medicine. And I was listening to them speak and receiving their wisdom. And they were talking about that concept that they would witness, and they themselves witness their uncles and their aunties like able to call down an eagle from the sky by singing to it in the same way. And the eagle would come and land and they could take a feather from the eagle for their ceremonial garb. And like just hearing you talk that they call them down from the trees, these frogs, it's like, wow, this wisdom, this ability to communicate with all of life that we seem to have lost. It just seems interesting to me that you would bring that up when I was just listening to that story last night. And like what a gift it is to receive. Yeah, it's in the field to receive this wisdom.
I'm glad you're speaking about it because I wish I was there right now in Denver for psychedelic science because they only have it every few years. And I attended the last one and am very deep in that world and co-created psychedelictimes.com with my ex-husband and then Entheo Ventures with my former partner. And the whole psychedelic industry is where my heart is for sure.
I had a question, like a biological. I don't know if that's right. Actually, I'm not a science girl.
Hey, I like that word.
I'm a metaphysical girl. Is there any contraindications for Kambo with heart problems? Like I know Iboga, for example, you have to be because you're talking about heart rate. You're nodding your head. Okay, share about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I have not been serving a lot of Kambo. I'll be very honest. In the past year or two, just been like nomading around. And when I had like a home base and I was serving a lot, I was like, I could rattle off to you every single contraindication. But at this moment, I would have to like bring up my, my handbook and look at all of it. But there are actually quite a few contraindications. Yeah, actually quite a few.
Right.
That's one thing. Before you receive Kambo, it's good to go through all of those. And like, for me, I have a waiver, a medical waiver, and all of these different medical questionnaire that you have to go through and make sure that you don't. There's a procedure and a protocol, of course, because it can be dangerous, but it's really not. I'd like to say, like, I feel very safe with it. Even though the other day, I'll be honest with this, the other day I served my current partner and it was so terrifying because he has really low blood pressure, which is not necessarily a contraindication, but because it brings your blood pressure and your heart rate down so low, you can faint. So he has a history of fainting and he did faint, and he didn't just faint once, he fainted a second time and a third time and a fourth time. And I was like, okay, this isn't normal. This is terrifying. So I contacted one of my friends who's a doctor, and she said, okay, well, you just go through like this and see if he's fine. This is happening. I'm like, okay, he's fine. But I mean, every individual is unique and you need to consider all of these different things before receiving it. It's like a generally healthy individual is fine receiving Kambo. I've never seen any issues. Even the other day wasn't actually an issue. He fainted,
Yeah. Just felt scary. Yeah. It's one of those things, I think like we all drive cars, even though there is a risk to driving a car. But the benefit to driving a car outweighs the risk. And so I think we have to start to approach psychedelics. I heard someone saying this and I just thought it was so true, but I can't quote them because I can't remember who it was. But whoever you are, bless you. Like, we have to start taking psychedelics in the same accord, like having a culture around psychedelics. It's like, yeah, there are some risks. And if you're healthy and don't have any contraindications to psychedelics, and you're doing them in a proper setting with an experienced guide, and some psychedelics don't need as much an experienced guide, others do, they're higher risk, but there is some risks involved, but the benefits are worth it in the same way that the benefits of driving. We're not like, wow, people get in an accident, some people died, so we should all never drive again. It's like we've all decided collectively, like, it's worth the risk to us. And I think we're at a point in history where we're deciding collectively that we need healing so desperately, and these medicines are so capable of supporting that healing that we're stepping over that threshold, and we're going to find out what happens. Yeah. Stay tuned for the next episode of Earth.
I love that you talk on that. Like, everyone drives, like most of us drive every single day or like every single week. And it's like, it's actually really dangerous. Every time I'm on a busy highway, I look around, especially in LA, right? I look around and I'm like, wow, do I just trust all of these strangers that they're not like fucked up or drunk or high and they're not going to hit me up? It's like the craziest thing that we do this, like,
take your life in your own hands.
Crazy act of trust. And it's like, but I'm scared to take a mushroom that grew out of the ground next to me or grew out of some cow shit, whatever.
Yeah, bless the dung. I mean, in Australia, it's like as soon as it rains, go out to those paddocks. You're a farm girl because there's going to be mushroom in that cow shit. Oh shit, did I just drop some information on y'all? Everyone's going to be rummaging through the cow shit after the rain. Wow. Oh my gosh, I feel like we just scratched the surface. We're probably going to have to do a part 2. This was amazing, my love. Like, we kind of just connected on Instagram. I was like, hey, do you want to be on my podcast? You're like, yeah. And now I'm like, whoa, I'm so grateful that you're here. This is a beautiful connection. You're an incredible woman, and grateful for the work you're doing in the world. And speaking of, if our listeners would like to connect with you and your work, where can they find you?
Yeah, I am everywhere as Lana Shay, LANASHAY, Instagram, wherever, all the channels. Popping up a podcast soon, doing all the things. But now that I have a book out, I'm easy to find. Just look for Lana Shay.
Look for Lana Shay. You heard it here first. Thank you so much, sister.
Thank you.
That's it for today, Awakened One. And just a quick thank you from me. Thank you for gifting us with your most precious resource, your time and attention, so that we can make this world a more awakened place. And if we're not friends on Instagram yet, then we absolutely should be. So come on over and say hello at Angelika Alana, and I'll see you there and see you next week.